of the Linux distribution working group, and we are open for contributions by other people and want to be open for all, but you can all can contribute also to Linux on the mainframe, and therefore our idea was to give an introduction how you all can contribute to Linux on the mainframe. Firstly, we will speak about the roles in Linux distributions. There are also entry roles for beginners without any development skills where you can contribute. Then we are coming to the Linux distribution working group, which we have created for a collaboration between all Linux distributions. Then we are coming to examples of the structures of OpenSUSE, Fedora, and Debian. All three are community distributions, therefore they are open for contributions from the outside. Then we are coming to the topic upstream first integration, because the enterprise distributions have got mostly also upstream first principle, so they can receive the content from OpenSUSE and Fedora and Debian to the enterprise Linux distributions. And then we are coming to the topic, the collaboration between the Linux distributions on S390X, also related to the Linux distribution working group, and Elizabeth has created some content about additional developer resources for S390X, and finally we are open for a Q&A session. Firstly, about myself, I am senior lead mainframe architect and open source evangelist at Kyndryl now. Last year I was at Accenture, but now I'm also paid for my open source contributions to C-Linux, therefore I'm the chief maintainer of OpenSUSE C systems, the co-chair of the Linux distribution working group. I'm a conference speaker. You can see it also here at Tech Exchange, of course. Then I'm a mainframe architect for hybrid cloud topics, educator for C-Linux and Kubernetes, and I'm also mentoring junior architects.
Hello, my name is Liz. So I'm presenting here today with Sarah. So you can read this stuff, but the big thing to know about me is I really love open source software. I joined IBM a little over 6 years ago, and prior to that I'd been doing like Linux SRE work. So I've been doing work as doing just running a lot of servers. I spent time at HP running infrastructure for the OpenStack open source project. So all my open source work at that time was based on like SRE stuff. So we're using Ansible, we're using Puppet and stuff, and putting that all in Git. And that was a really, really fun thing that I worked on. And so when I moved on from that, I was doing more sysadmin work. And then IBM came along and said, hey, you want to work on mainframes? And I'm like I don't know what that is. But you know, I had some calls with some technical folks, and they told me about LinuxONE, they told me about LinuxONE, and sort of gave me the rundown of like, you can run Linux on the coolest hardware you've ever seen. And I was like, all right, I'm in. So here I am. So about 6.5 years at IBM. I joined the Open Mainframe Project basically immediately. It was one of the things, in addition to like running on really cool hardware, knowing that IBM was involved with the Open Mainframe Project was a huge, huge thing for me. And on that note, there is a birthday card in the back because it's now the 10th anniversary of the Open Mainframe Project. So if you'd like to write a note or sign or something in the back on your way out, we also have stickers and stuff back there, so you can stop by. All right. But yeah. All right. Oh yeah, that's blue dot. That means it's me. So we've thrown out a lot of words already. You might have heard upstream and distribution. And for those of you who are not so familiar with Linux, I just want to step back and go through the slide to kind of talk about what those things mean. So basically, a Linux distribution is a collection of software packages that make a full operating system. So you've got things like GCC and Python and Java, and these are all components of the operating system. And when you put these together in a certain configuration, that's when you get a Linux distribution. They will ship with perhaps different versions of Python, maybe different versions of Java, And it's all based on sort of the workflow of that project. So Sarah works on OpenSUSE. I see Mike in the audience here, he works on SUSE. We've got, of course, a bunch of Red Hatters at this conference this week. But how it works basically is there's these upstream projects, which means they come from further up in the stream. So first, these are created. They are then adopted typically by a community-driven distribution, and this is where a lot of the testing is done. So we've got Fedora, OpenSUSE, and Debian are kind of the three main ones that funnel into our open mainframe ecosystem. In the case of Fedora, that is going to be your base for what Red Hat Enterprise Linux becomes. Same for SUSE, OpenSUSE and SUSE, and basically Debian and Ubuntu. There's more seats up front if anyone wants to come down, you don't have to stand. And so this is kind of how the chart goes. Starts with upstream, goes into these community distributions, and then eventually it gets into these enterprise distributions, and the enterprise ones are the ones that are officially supported on LinuxONE and LinuxONE. All right, go ahead. Was there one more slide? Oh, there we go, okay. All right, so that's what a Linux distribution is, that's what upstream is. Yeah, please come down, don't worry about interrupting us, you're all good. So you're probably sitting there being like, okay, cool, all this magic happens in Linux distributions, but like, what does that mean for me? So we're here to talk about contributing. So basically, there are a lot of roles in a Linux distribution, especially the community maintained ones, because folks who are contributing to these have a lot of skills to bring to the table. So when I started working on open source software, like 2005, I was really scared because you're out there in the public contributing patches into a public repository. That can be a scary thing because I was new to a lot of this and I didn't really know what I was doing, so I'm like, oh, I'm gonna look stupid, it's gonna be awful. So I started with documentation. Now, 2005, this was DocBook. Has anyone used DocBook before? It is not easy. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna start with something easy, and then I plunged headfirst into a ton of XML. So that was interesting, but that was kind of the way I started. So like, one thing that a lot of folks do is they'll get started with documentation. And for my world, that was like, I was a user, and so I was able to update the Getting Started guide for an open source project I was working on. And having like, as a fresh face to the project, I had a really good view into that. And that's something that I like whenever I'm mentoring someone or working with someone who's new to the project. I say, first, look at our Getting Started documentation, because no one has looked at that in like 2 years, and everyone who has looked at it has been with the project for 5 years, and we don't remember what it's like to get started anymore. So working on documentation is really great, and we really, really value those contributions from folks who can write documentation with a fresh perspective. Translations for folks who speak in language other than English. I spent a lot of time on the OpenStack project running the translation server. I don't speak another language, but I was able to run that service, and there's a lot of really dedicated folks that are doing translations for open source projects. I mentioned I was doing systems administration on the OpenStack project. I still do systems administration on the Ubuntu project, just for fun. And then I do a lot of it through my work at IBM because I give out VMs to open source projects, which we'll talk about later. But there's always need for systems administration and folks in the project to give people shell access to things, to do testing, and to basically run infrastructures that projects need, especially for the larger ones.
And we are both ambassadors.
Yeah. We are both ambassadors, which means we come to conferences like this and talk about our work and say, hey, this is cool and you should join us. And then the last one is actually the first one up there. Oh, and QA engineers. When I was doing systems administration work, I was supporting all the QA that was being done on the OpenStack project, so that was really cool. But I also sat on the Ubuntu Community Council for 6 years, dealing with like conflict resolution and a lot of community stuff, because I've been involved in tons of parts of the project, so I had a really good view into that. That's definitely something you work up to in a project, but honestly, there is a real need for governing boards and people to serve on them who are dedicated to the project and know a lot about the project. So even if you feel like you can't contribute anywhere else, maybe because you're not as technical or you don't want to work in technical stuff when it's not your day job, which was the case in my case, I joined the council and said, hey, I can help with direction of the project and working through community things.
When we are coming to topics where I am also involved, I told already that I'm doing the maintenance of open C systems, and yes, we have got an S390 export there, and where I'm also part of the release engineering team or our Linux distribution calls that also technical steering committee. Therefore, we are responsible for making technical decisions. What do we want to change in the Linux distribution? I grew also via the other roles shown before into my role, and after my studies I received the question, you are an expert for S390X now, you become a release engineer for that and take over the S390 export and becomes part of the release engineering team.
And I'll add to that, it's just funny, in the Ubuntu community we had a student who'd been working on, and I don't mean university student, he was 14, and he was working on a project, and he was working through a bunch of releases and stuff, and like doing stuff for years, and at age 16 he became a release manager because he knew so much about our infrastructure that he was like promoted to it. We didn't know who he was, nobody had ever met him. I think we kind of knew he was young because he might have mentioned it at some point. But you know, on the internet, no one knows you're a dog, right? So
yes, that's related to meritocracy in the open source community. Nobody looks onto your on any certifications, on any age or something like that. If you have got the motivation to learn and grow into this role, you can pick up this responsibility. Therefore, I'm working also close to the release managers at OpenSUSE. They take over also program manager tasks. At Fedora, there is a separate program manager in a full-time role, but anyways, some Linux distributions have got all in one role related to x86 as an example. Then we have got package maintainers who are integrating the updates from upstream into the different Linux distributions. Package maintainers can be also responsible for different Linux distributions, but these people are called also cross-community members. Then, if they are responsible for one software and distribute it to every Linux distributions, they are package maintainers in different Linux distributions. And then we have got also upstream developers who are developing there and contribute upstream. It depends on the Linux distribution whether you can become a community member then, but most Linux distributions I know are saying if you are contributing upstream, we are integrating it, you are also a member for us. We are coming now to the structure of different Linux distributions. Here I have created the structure of OpenSUSE. I spoke already about the package maintainers. If you want to contribute with any patches or any features, you are contributing to the development project. The package maintainer is reviewing it. It is going to test stages where the release managers are doing also some reviews, and then it is forwarded to our different ports where I, as a release engineer, I am responsible for S390 export. If you find any issues or any behavior is not as expected, you can report to bugzilla.opensuse.org. We have got our own Bugzilla where you can choose the S390X architecture, or you can reach out to us via our C systems mailing list and we interact on it. Fedora has got a bigger overview with different committees and the Fedora Council. Here at the end is also the S390X architecture in the background, and then there is also the infrastructure team who is responsible for the maintenance of all the infrastructure. There's also the mainframe by Red Hat, of course. There you can be active also. They have got funny names for their tooling. Yes, they are in the Red Hat Bugzilla, but they have got a funny label, Fedora Tracker. Therefore, if you have got any bugs related to Fedora on C, you have to choose the Fedora tracker label, and then it is labeled as a S390X bug report for S390X. Their mailing list is S390X at lists.fedoraproject.org, and Dan, who is also part of our Linux distribution working group, is interacting there, and he is working as a full-time employee for Fedora at Red Hat. Debian has got a structure equal to OpenSUSE, I have to say. Above, we have got the author or the contributor who wants to contribute. Then we have got different steps for reviewing. If you want to contribute to Debian, there are 3 different roles for becoming something equal to an OpenSUSE member or Fedora member. A Debian contributor is receiving introductions and is learning their documentation or bug reports creations. The Debian maintainer, who is reviewing the packages, is responsible for package maintenance, and the Debian developer is receiving full project access and is receiving also a certification. You are tested and verified. We can trust you. You are a full member as a Debian developer. Here we have got the different architectures that we, after testing in the test stage, that the source packages can go to the different ports. And on this way, here we have got also the FTP share, then all will be published. A little difference between Debian and OpenSUSE and Fedora is that they are using something like a mailing list as a bug tracking tool. Therefore, you can find it on bugsdebian.org, and that is more something like a mailing list. But anyways, that's their bug tracking tool, and their mailing list is Debian S390. Then we are coming how we are collaborating. You have seen I have picked up also the content of other Linux distributions, how they are working, because I am receiving also introductions and some insight into other Linux distributions, how they are working. And yes, after my short time at IBM, we have created the Linux distribution working group together with Fedora and Debian together, and we wanted to have a place where we all can collaborate together via our mailing list, wiki, and chat. Our goal was also that we provide a space for distributions to request for help on our ports. Therefore, also the distinguished engineer by IBM for LinuxONE, Ulrich Weigand, is part of our working group, the same as Elizabeth from IBM's side. Therefore, we are not alone if anything strange is happening, but we are sharing also our patches and everything else. An additional point is that we need also infrastructure for building and testing, of course. Therefore, we wanted to make it safe and secure that we can receive also the required infrastructure for supporting our S390X ports. And I have added at the end also the better support from IBM to fix S390X specific bugs, because in the past the main focus was only on enterprise distributions and not also on community distributions. And I can say that has been really improved, and we have shown that we can collaborate together and have also fun together. If you are interested how you as upstream developers or also with your ideas can join us, we have got also a mailing list which is listed also in our wiki. and therefore we are open for all and not only people who are contributing to the Linux distributions. Okay. Yes, I said already we have started together with OpenSUSE, Debian and Fedora and together with IBM. After FOSDEM, Rocky Linux and Alba Linux have joined. And yes, the first supporter or sponsor was SUSE, was supporting our Linux distribution working group. And then Red Hat and Ubuntu have joined also as enterprise distributions. Therefore, if anything is happening strange or something like that, we are receiving also support from the enterprise level. And with that, we are collaborating together via the Open Mainframe Project and our S390X mailing list for that. And I can say that's a full success. Our collaborative process is that if there are any problems with our ports, we can discuss it on our mailing list. Other Linux distributions are reproducing the bugs if there are any, and mostly we can reproduce it also and find the reasons. And yes, we have got open discussions on the mailing lists, forward the issues and ideas for improvement to IBM. And yes, in our monthly meetings, we have got also come together with a review and a status update. What is new? One hand, as an example, we have OpenSUSE as an example, has got also the OpenSUSE Leap release at the beginning of the month. The same as SUSE Linux Enterprise server has been released. Such topics are coming also up that we know are the Linux distribution, Debian, Fedora, OpenSUSE have got releases, and therefore we are up to date about all the others. And yes, sometimes we have got also collaborative small projects. I brought up as an example some months ago the topic Docker, and should I provide Docker and Docker images for S390X via OpenSUSE that we can reuse it everywhere, because the Docker support by IBM is not big enough, so that Docker and Docker is provided for S390X. And then I received an agreement, yes, do it, and with that all can have a benefit related to such small projects.
Thank you. Let me see how we. Oh, we're good on time. I'm gonna just mention. So, when we say we get together and talk about things, I want to give an example because I know that helps people get a little more clarity. So, say there is a bug in Java. There's always a bug in Java.
Yes, sometimes we've got Java updates.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, each of these distributions, when we say packages, that means how we ship something like Java. So essentially, we will all eventually run into the same Java bug. Some of the distributions will pull it in sooner. So in one case, it was pulled in, I think, by Fedora. And so we got together at the meeting, and Sarah was like, "Hey Dan, have you seen this issue that just popped up on the tracker?" And he's like, "Yes." And we've already dealt with it, and we submitted a patch to the Java organization, or we reached out to IBM and said, "Hey, you gotta fix this, Java team at IBM." However it got fixed, it got fixed. And so just by this ability for us to get together in these groups and get together in these meetings, we have been able to solve problems a lot more quickly, and also validate that it's not just a problem with our distribution. One of my favorite ones right now is a GNOME bug. So GNOME is a graphical, it's a desktop environment, but they also include a lot of libraries. So some of the project, the upstream project, they're like, it's a mainframe, it doesn't have a monitor, why do you need graphical interface to it? But it turns out a lot of folks using mainframes do things like X forwarding, they do VNC, and I'm gonna totally steal a moment for a moment here. At the IBM booth, the IBM Z booth later this week in the Expo Hall, I can show you running Doom over VNC on the LinuxONE. That's like our secret demo. I'm supposed to be only showing some other games, but I got along Doom as well. So Doom is, if for those who are younger, it's from like 1993, the original first-person shooter. It's really cute and fun. And there's a big joke online, like, does it run Doom? And I'm like, hey, it does. So, but that's done over VNC. So one of the things that the bug was about was colors being weird on S390X, and that would really cause us trouble for Doom. So, but yeah, that's kind of what these, this sort of thing that we come together and collaborate on, and just how much time we've been able to save because we're not solving these in isolation. Another thing, I gave a talk at the Open Source Summit a couple of years ago, and one of the things that the maintainers of each of these distributions felt is they felt they were really operating kind of in isolation. Like, I am the only one in the world who cares about Z, right? But by getting together, as Sarah said, we have fun together, we meet up at conferences, and we really become friends, but also like, we feel that sense of connection, and it's not just like I'm the only one who cares about Z on OpenSUSE, right? Now I'm one of many across a bunch of different distributions who care about this platform. And it helps us care more about it, honestly, and also knowing that we have someone to fall back on, like, hey, I can't figure out this bug, but let me bring it to the team and bring it to the working group, and we can figure this out. If not, we'll just give it to Liz and IBM and they'll fix it. All right, so now we're at this point, you're like, okay, let's work on this, that sounds awesome, but I don't have a mainframe in my garage. I don't either. They say I don't have enough power in my garage and it's too expensive. But no, so we, at IBM and across a bunch of these orgs, we provided a bunch of resources available to developers who, if you don't have access to a Z system, this is going to be really hard, right? So I'll talk about this in a moment. We have the LinuxONE Community Cloud and Open Source Software Cloud, which provides you a virtual server. You have root access on that server, and you can work on that for development. We also have a Jenkins infrastructure run over at the Oregon State University Open Source Lab. So if your open source project that uses Jenkins for testing, we can provide you Jenkins runners, so you can run Jenkins on a Z system. Circle CI, what you can do with Circle CI and the GitLab hosted runner and the GitHub hosted runner, you can get one of these VMs here and then add the hosted runner onto the VM, and then you can add that to your open source project and do testing on that. I'll let Sarah talk about the OpenSUSE build service in a moment because that's really awesome. But there's also Canonical runs Launchpad Personal Package Archive. That will, by request, it'll build for S390X. The packages for Ubuntu. And then the thing I'll talk about a little bit more is the GitHub Actions hosted runner, but yeah.
One hint about OpenSUSE build service that does not build only for OpenSUSE. You can build for most Linux distributions, OpenSUSE, RHEL, Fedora, Debian, Ubuntu, also Alba Linux, I believe. So therefore, you have got the spec file and you can build for all Linux distributions with it already.
Yeah, so this has been a really great resource for some of our upstream projects who are looking for kind of a home to build things. K3S, there's a fork of K3S, which is a Kubernetes, like a mini Kubernetes right now that someone's working on, and he's hosting it on OBS because
Podman is building for it. Therefore, if you are downloading from a Podman page RPMs or DEX, that's also built on our OpenSUSE build service. Therefore, many projects are building on it.
And it also covers a bunch of architectures, not just S390X, which is really cool. And it automatically just builds for a bunch of architectures. All right, so the LinuxONE Open Source Software Cloud. So these run on C15s or LinuxONE 3s. But basically, the only requirement to get one of these, they're like long-lived VMs. So you can get one for LinuxONE Community Cloud for like 120 days. Or you can get one on the open source cloud if you're a established open source contributor. And those, we give them to you and then you have to renew every year to kind of say, yes, I'm still using this, yes, I'm still involved with the project. And sometimes I'll reach out and be like, so have you done anything with it yet? I'm not going to take it away, but... and so we kind of just check in. So I think this was the link to a bunch of resources that I'll have the link to everything. And this is the link to the application form for the open source cloud. So this is what Sarah has one. I think there's a bunch of people around who have access to these, but this is kind of like, either you can add it to your CI system, or you can use it as like a development scratch environment. Like I just want to test out this bug and see if it's working. Or you can install Doom on it. Just kidding. This has been my big project for the year that I'm really excited about. If anyone has worked in open source projects that use GitHub, there is a tool for continuous integration testing called GitHub Actions. It is built into GitHub itself, basically. You add some workflow files. We now have one that we host at IBM for Power and Z, and so for Linux. So what you do is you create an issue in our public repository, you sign up for an IBM ID, and you add this you get approval in the issue. We have to approve it after we do some review. We're actually working on open telemetry right now to get them onboarded. And then you add the GitHub Marketplace app to the project, we approve it, and then you write your tests, and it integrates fully into GitHub. So now you're getting Z results back in with all the rest of your test results, which is so cool. And it makes it a lot easier for projects to test things. And again, this can be used in collaboration with something like a virtual server that you have on the LinuxONE open source cloud. So you can test your changes on the open source cloud, and then run it, and then know that they're going to pass in the test infrastructure, which is really nice to know. So that was GitHub. This is GitLab. This is another continuous integration service. They have support for a bunch of architectures for their Linux runners, and this would be something that would be self-hosted. So again, you get one of those LinuxONE open source cloud environments, and you install GitLab on it. The really cool news, the really exciting thing this year, is we also support ZOS now, which I know very little about, but people say it's really cool. But ZOS, you now have runners for this. So if you did want to set up a GitLab environment, you can have runners on Linux and on the ZOS side testing your software.
What is your question?
What's the difference between GitLab and GitHub?
Oh yeah, what's the difference between GitLab and GitHub? They're two separate companies.
Microsoft is behind GitHub, and GitLab is our own company with an own platform. GitHub has got GitHub Actions as a CI, and GitLab is called GitLab CI, the continuous integration platform.
Yeah, so it depends on what you want to be doing. They are very similar. They both use, Git obviously as the revision control system, but they have different features, different price points, and they're all, it really depends on what you need. A lot of people will sort of compare the two, or a few others, like Circle CI is also mixed, and things like Travis.
Open source projects are distributed on both platforms.
Yeah.
You should know.
Yeah, so sometimes we'll see projects on GitLab, sometimes we'll see them on GitHub. But we've been partners, the LinuxONE community for a very long time with GitLab. Yeah.
I know, this might sound like a really stupid question, but S390X then is not referring to ZOS at all?
So S390X is the hardware architecture, and so that is like, this is x86, my laptop.
Yeah.
My phone is ARM architecture, and so is my watch.
Right.
And mainframes are S390X architecture.
Oh, so you're saying when you refer to an S390X, that doesn't matter what generation of mainframe it is, so it could be
it doesn't matter what generation of mainframe.
it could be a 14, a 15, a 16, a 17.
Yeah, it can be all the modern numbers. I think if you go back to was there a Z10? I don't know.
Sure,
Yeah.
a BC10.
Yeah.
Anything with Z in the name is
Anything with Z in it,
S390X,
yeah,
because that's 64-bit.
Right, so there's also S390. And
Right,
that's
that was
the
really
32-bit,
old.
yeah. And so when I say that's just kind of how we refer to it. But it would be, that is the architecture regardless of whether it's ZOS or Linux or ZVM or whatever you're working with, yeah. So it's just the hardware architecture.
Yes.
Hi, so I have a question on the GitHub Actions self-hosted runners.
Mm-hmm.
So in our organizations, we are on GitHub Actions for almost of our CI stuff, right? But for Z, right, the way we do it, we have our GitHub Actions on x86, and then we SSH it into a ZVM and then run our process, build our containers and all of it, right? But what's the plan on, we open a ticket with GitHub to support S390X natively, so that we don't have to go through this wired path and just run the GitHub Actions on ZVM or ZCX containers, right? So do you have any visibility on that?
Yeah, so we should talk later for sure, but the patch that we patch the GitHub Actions runner with is public. So if you wanted to grab our patch from the IBM repository, you can do that. I can talk to you. But another thing is that, you know, we've been talking to Microsoft as well, and we're like, hey, we really want S390X support. And what we're really lacking is they're like, that's just IBM saying they want us to support their thing. And I'm like, no, there's lots of people out there who are using this, and a lot of them are too shy to talk about it. So Canonical has been talking on some of our bug reports, but all the people who are not IBMers who can talk in this conversation publicly about their need for that is going to be really helpful to us, because we don't want to keep applying our patch because sometimes it breaks, and that's very unpleasant for everyone. And there's a bunch of people using the patch now.
Something like that is happening also on mailing lists. If there is anything on a public mailing list related to S390X, we need support or hints. We are sharing that on our mailing list, and then we bring all the people together. Write something about that that you need it, please.
Yeah, and the issue is like our Linux engineering, they don't want to support a specific patch for a specific team, right? They said, okay, we need to get support from Microsoft.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so getting it from Microsoft will be better for everyone all around. So yeah, we'll chat later. I'll get your information. We'll talk. That would be great. All right. So we're kind of coming toward the end, so it was a good time for questions. But I reached out to a couple of our contributors who are sort of in the Open Mainframe world. Kriesch, he contributes to a bunch of projects across the Open Mainframe Project. He does a lot of ZOS stuff, but he also joins our our Linux distributions working group from time to time as an individual developer. He's also joining onto another initiative we have going for Mainframe Software Hub for Linux. But he's been great. He's an IBM champion for this year. But he had this quote. I probably don't need to read it to you. But he is an individual developer out there in the world, and he was drawn to supporting IBM Z just because he thinks he can make a real impact. And that is why a lot of us got into this. Like, I was working on open source software first because I was trying to fix a bug in the software I was using. But then I realized I could help so many people make a real impact in the industry, and it's really what he's also describing here. And he said, sometimes it's thankless work, but there's peers in the community, there's other people that you're working with, and it's a really valuable thing because you can really make an impact in ways that you may not expect. And he says, tell your boss, help you play. So, if you want to just wrap up, Sarah.
Yes, you have heard a lot about this topic now, and now everybody can contribute to LinuxONE. There are no restrictions. IBM is not the owner of LinuxONE. That's the community. We are all contributing, and the result is based on what we have achieved together, and not only by IBM. The contributions to upstream and to community distributions are welcome, therefore unimportant whether you want to join a community distribution or any upstream project, you can do that, and we are happy if you want to contribute to LinuxONE on this way. Tests can be integrated as S390X emulations to GitHub Actions and GitLab CI. These platforms are the main platforms where open source projects are, I have to say. And yes, the upstream support or for Linux distributions are possible via our Linux distribution working group at the Open Mainframe Project. And on this way, we are coming to questions and answers. Some questions are already answered. Are any other questions available?
And I mentioned we have a booth. Also, we're doing an unboxing of a Z17 in the sandbox tomorrow. I'll be part of that. I'm so excited I was invited. So we'll be opening one from like a crate. It's going to be so much fun. And again, I'll have the games demos on the next one at our booth and stuff. We're also, this is really hard to
Can you
read.
go back one?
Yep. Oh, sorry. Sarah, you're gonna step back.
Thank you.
Anyway, but yeah, any questions, other questions. Also, I'll be around all week, so if you wanna grab me and ask questions later, I'm happy to help. We also do these little Lego kits if you're not an IBM, we don't give them, but other people can give them. If you attend certain sessions and then come to our booth and say like, hey, I attended this session, and tell us one cool fact about it or something. I don't know. And you have to enroll in a LinuxONE lab. And yeah, so there's a couple of ways to go. But yeah, the Lego kits are really cool. We did one for Z16 and I'm a big fan. Okay. Oh, sorry. All right, so. Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah. And again, it's the Open Mainframe Project's 10th anniversary this year, so we have a birthday card in the back if you want to sign your name or write a little message. We have lots of pages, so don't feel like you are taking up much space. I wrote a big long message and drew a penguin in the room next door. So. All right, thank you everyone.